Oh, we have jokes tonight. Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is I'm so excited that we are back. We are have an exciting guest this evening. More importantly, I'm so excited to announce that Pastor Johnson is back with us. We have missed him. We're so glad to have him back with all the shenanigans. So, without further ado, are going to be running really tight and really quick tonight. So, we want to be quick about our connection. Take the opportunity to like and share the broadcast. So I'm going to bring on Pastor Johnson and Brother Kai all at once. How are you? Good to see all of you.
I'm well, Pastor Yolanda. I don't know why my friend likes stalking my Facebook page and grabbing my travel pictures. I just
Don't watch it. Don't when it comes up, don't even watch it. Don't look.
why?
Because you never know what you're going to get. Don't even
You
look at it. Don't
you
look at
just why, Robert? Why?
it.
As
Yam
Pastor,
no ho renge kyo. I got you.
that's not speaking in tongues, Kai. Let me just be very clear. So no, I don't want anybody out there to think that Pastor Yolanda just has the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost, and can speak in tongues. That was some kind of Buddhist chant she was doing. I'm cool
No.
with Buddhist chants, though. I'm cool with Buddhist chants. I just don't want anybody to be confused about that. Good evening, folks. It's good to be back. It is great to be back. I had
Oh,
a great time off, much needed time off. I think I took off serious time and truly unplugged for the first time probably in 25 years of full-time ministry. I've had vacation time. I've taken time off, but not significant time so that I could really unplug. And I really unplugged and just didn't respond to emails, text messages, didn't do any planning other than spiritual planning for the my own well-being. And I guess Pastor Yolanda, that look on her face means that.
I had no gray hair before he left.
So I'm
You
gonna
know,
get.
in the horror movies, like when you know before the actual travesty begins, there's all this long flowing beautiful hair, and then after the exorcism and everything's calmed down, there's like these streaks of gray hair, white hair from the trauma.
Is that what it is?
That's what it is. That's
You,
what it is.
so you're saying you age like people age when they serve as president of the United States. You know how they in 4 years they so
Times two.
okay, all right. I hear you well.
What Joe Biden is going through has absolutely nothing. Let me stop tripping. We had a good time in the Lord while you were gone. We missed you, but we
We
held it
missed
down.
you.
We held it down.
We held it down. That's
Well,
true.
our
Served a few people, discipled a few people. We did a few things.
Well, I thank you so much for your outstanding leadership in my absence. You're a great leader with my with my presence. But thank you for in my absence for covering the everything went really well. I really enjoyed you all's conversation last Wednesday. But it's good to be back. I had a chance to for all the St. Mark folks who are watching. Had a chance to was in LA with my daughter Giselle, who works with Sony Entertainment, and got a chance to just kind of hang out in Southern California and went by the Crystal Cathedral, which is now called Christ Cathedral,
Mm.
uh, which the late great Robert Schuller, who emphasized possibility thinking, and by the way, which helped to influence Pastor Tyrone Gordon when place of possibilities and transformation became the slogan for St. Mark. That's kind of in part where that inspiration came from. He and several other young United Methodist pastors about 30 years ago were going out to Southern California to the Crystal Cathedral Leadership Conference, and they were greatly inspired. So I got a chance to go stand on a beautiful sunny day, as is so mostly sunny in Southern California, and just took a beautiful picture. If you want to see that, picture's on our Facebook page. So I just stood there and looked and dreamed, because I think that great things are coming for us this fall. So it's good to be back. St. Mark, thank you for giving me the opportunity to take some time off and take care of my soul, take care of my well-being, so that I can come back and serve as your leader. I'm so excited about tonight's guest, and we're going to bring him on. He is Dr. Kevin Murriel. He is a dynamic young pastor of Cascade United Methodist Church. Let me just tell you a little about him, and then we'll bring him on. The Reverend Dr. Kevin Murriel currently leads over 7,000 members as senior pastor of Cascade United Methodist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. He's a biblical scholar and one of the leading visionaries and orators of this generation. A native Mississippian. I didn't know that. I missed that. A graduate of Jackson State University. A native Mississippian. Come on now. A graduate of Jackson State University. Come on now. Dr. Kevin, my wife, as you're listening, my wife is a graduate of Jackson State University, where he earned his bachelor's degree in business administration. He went on to Emory, which is one of the finest theological institutions in our country right now, Emory School of Theology, and has his doctor of ministry degree from Duke University, which is another one of our finest academic institutions, as well as theological learning environments. He was named by the Dean and Doctoral Committee of the Duke Divinity School as a degree marshal of the 2014 doctoral cohort. He's a dynamic preacher. He is on the board of preachers at Morehouse College. I saw that, which is really super amazing. Did his doctoral dissertation on unveiling racism, racial reconciliation, and he also is the author of 2 books, Breaking the Color Barrier, A Vision for Church Growth. And he is now serving. There's so many other things. He has an amazing family, and I want to show you a picture of his beautiful family sometime tonight before we finish. But we are blessed to have him on to pick his brain, his heart, and his mind about our present, the state of our present, and what we can hope for the future in terms of the church, in terms of young adults. So Dr. Kevin Murriel, welcome to St. Mark United Methodist Church and Ignite podcast. Thank you for coming on, sir. How
Yeah,
are you?
thank you. Doing well, man. Look, I wish I was as good as you, being able to take a look sabbatical and get some rest and relaxation. But I hope what people realize is that it really is a model for great pastoral leadership, that you have to be centered and poured into, and you also have to be rested so that you can pour back into others. And so, kudos to you for taking that time and having me on. I'm grateful for just the opportunity to come and speak with you all just for a little bit tonight.
I'm so excited about this conversation. Thank you for those kind comments. I got to a point, Kevin, where I realized that stuff was spilling out of me onto other people that was going that can destroy churches, families, friendships, and so when you get to that point, there are times when people will tell you, "Hey, man, are you okay?" But then when you get to the point where you're asking yourself, "Am I okay?" Then that's and so I just realized it from just so many things, or everything I've been through over the past 25 years as a pastor. So much of that just never got healed, never got grieved, never got unloaded, and it was just kind of stacked, kind of tucked away, but it started bubbling up, and I needed to just go and unload a lot of that stuff so that I can come back and be free. So thank you for those kind words regarding taking care of yourself. It is a delight to have you on. And
Thank
so I
you.
want to
Appreciate
make
it.
the most of our time because we have some people on, and I want them to be able to hear from you and really for us to get as much of your heart and mind as possible. I want to start it. What are you working on right now? I want to, you know, what are you working on? What has you very excited about life and ministry right now?
Well, I always start with saying in ministry, my first ministry is my family. I love my wife, Ashley, who is, just my rock. And she is, a service member of the CDC. And so she served our country well during COVID. And
Wow.
so she's really the rock star of our family. PhD from Penn State. I married up, I like to tell folk,
Wow.
and just grateful for how she serves and inspires, and still is an amazing mom to our children. And yeah, there's the picture. That's my world right there. I mean, in three persons. Anderson Blake, who is our youngest, he just had his second birthday, June the 30th. He was a COVID baby, and so to all the parents out there who had children during COVID, we know the struggle. And Scarlet Grace is our princess. She's 6 years of age. I had a birthday in April, and so when people ask me how ministry is, I say my family's great,
Wow.
and that means the most to me. And so, how is pastoring? I love pastoring, but I'm a father first, and I'm a husband first, and that's my first ministry. Um,
That is
so I'm excited
awesome.
about seeing my kids grow up. I'm excited about growing in our marriage, but I'm really excited about as well what's happening in our church and how COVID has just unlocked all kinds of possibilities. I mean, I don't think we're an anomaly in that regard. I think it's been seen across the country, and everybody's like, how in the world did God allow a pandemic to close the doors of the church but open more ministry? And that has been an amazing opportunity for us. Cascade, right now, we've got really three major projects going on. We're working on our strategic plan for the next 2 to 3 years. We are in the middle of a major renovation of our entire campus, and we're also in the midst of launching a second campus in Midtown Atlanta. And that has just been a blessing. It's been overwhelming. It's been, it's kind of spanned the gamut of emotion, but we are already seeing the fruit of it. And so those are some of the things that I'm excited about.
That's exciting stuff. So I just want to capture three things you said and just kind of repeat them so folks can make sure we say Mark leader so we can make sure we got them. He mentioned that he was just really amazed about the opportunities that COVID has opened up for us. And I love that. Like, so rather than us seeing COVID and what has happened over the past 2 years as just problems, there are really opportunities for us to think differently about ministry and to minister to people in new ways. So thank you for that, Kevin. And then number two, talked about two things that St. Mark is doing. uh, strategic planning for the, and I'm saying to St. Mark the next 5 to 7 years, uh, and then renovation. And hopefully, what I want to propose, and what we want to do is revisioning, renovating, and repurposing space
Hmm.
for a new era of ministry. Like not having so much of our space committed to just Sunday morning that you can only use it on Sunday morning, but functional space that can be used throughout the week in all kinds of ways. And so there you go. You're doing so. You're right in the middle of that. Now, Kevin, you're a native Mississippian. What part of Mississippi are you from?
From Brandon, Mississippi, about 20 miles east of Jackson.
Absolutely. Okay. And then you went to Jackson State University.
Absolutely.
I know you are very
The
happy.
I love Jackson State, the Jackson State University. You got to put the THEE. Yeah, yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm surprised that hopefully folks are seeing us. I'm surprised that my wife hasn't come in it and said something. She's a alumnus of Jackson State University, accounting major, many years ago, though.
So she was in the College of Business with me. Yeah, well,
In the College of Business,
College of
yes.
Business as well. Yep.
Yes. And I know you're very proud about what's happening with Deion Sanders and the football team. Deion, not for the sake of just football,
Mhm.
but what he's doing missionally in terms of that area and the students and young Black men. I'm very proud of that, and I know you are too. So you went to Jackson State, and then the next step was Morehouse.
So after I finished Jackson State, I went to Emory, and then after that, I went to Duke. I was inducted into the board of preachers. They looked all the way to the bottom of the list and said they just need somebody to fill a slot for that particular. But I was deeply honored to often I have a lot of Morehouse men who go to my church, and I said, maybe I'm the only Morehouse man here who didn't have to actually get a degree from Morehouse. So that's I always joke with my guys about that.
Nice.
Yeah, more that is for those of you that are watching, to be inducted onto the board of preachers at Morehouse is a dream and passion for every African American preacher to get that kind of affirmation about your preaching gift. So that is absolutely awesome. So Kevin, I know you're not supposed. People say in professional circles you're not supposed to ask people their age, but I just gotta. So just tell us what age are you, Kevin?
So I'm 36. Had a 36th birthday in this past May.
And you came to Cascade how long ago?
Going to my 6th year now. So I was 30 when I assumed the role.
Wow.
Senior pastor.
What? Man, I thought you had been like 2 years. You've been there for 6 years?
In my 6th year. Now, the interesting thing about the story with Cascade is I was the associate pastor there for 3 years. So from 2012 to 2015, I was the associate.
Come on.
There, and then left for 2 years and came back.
All right,
So,
let's just pause there and let's have everybody take a deep breath and just inhale what he just said.
Before you inhale that, can you please acknowledge my sorority sister's comment?
Yes, you put it on the screen. Yes, so I kept saying that I was surprised that she wasn't saying anything. There's your fellow JSU alumnus, Kevin, right there. So yes. So let me just pause and say this. If you're watching this on my page, we want to see your comments. So if you're on my profile, we are not seeing your comments. Go to the St. Mark Facebook page so that you can comment, you can ask questions, you can engage with Dr. Murriel. We want you to be able to do that. So if you're watching on my profile, please go to the St. Mark Facebook page or the St. Mark group so that we can see your comments and you can engage with us. I want to pause right here and see if Kai and Yolanda have any questions they want to jump in. Hello, Linda Sims. Thank you for coming on. Kai, Yolanda, y'all want to jump in here?
I think that you are taking him down the road that I would like to hear. I think you hit all the high points, and I just think to kind of continue to grow and be able to pull from him some of the things that we can do to ensure that St. Mark is sustained and that it continues to grow. I think you're on the right track.
Yeah. So kind of, in the line of that, right? Talking about coming into ministry, getting there when you're 30, right? Spending some time there, going away, and then finding yourself coming back. It sounds like that by the time you were coming back, it's like pandemic as well, like, or rather, maybe pretty close to that. So, what wisdom or logistical uh, insight, or just even encouragement, might you give to other churches and leaders who are kind of still struggling to deal with the fact that we're coming out of a pandemic and struggling to adjust to maybe this new generation and maybe this new way of approaching church?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll approach it from two different perspectives. Let me talk about the leader perspective first. From a leadership perspective, I think the leader has to have very tough skin in this current climate. And ministry takes a certain, either it will you will cultivate a toughness, or you'll have kind of a trial by fire with it. And it is really being able to, the Bible talks about this whole thing about long suffering. We like to talk about patience. Patience is such a weak word. I mean, when you look in Greek and Hebrew, it talks about long suffering.
Suffering, yeah.
I think leaders who are able to endure seasons are going to be able to see the fruit of their labor. And I'm in a series right now, actually just concluded this past Sunday, and I was asking the question, and the question was, "What do I get in return?" I mean, we all want to know, for our faithfulness, God, what are you gonna get? What are you gonna give me back?
Mhm.
And oftentimes we're looking for some kind of tangible material blessing in return, but oftentimes God will give you the patience, the endurance to last through seasons. And so we looked, intently at the life of David. And when you really examine David's life,
Mhm.
David endured seasons,
Seasons.
right? From being anointed, by Samuel in the presence of his brothers. And by the way, he was last picked. So imagine having to deal with your father not even thinking that you were good enough to even get called, before what the other seven. So he's got to deal with that. Then he goes to face Goliath. That's another season. Then he's got to go deal with Saul. He has to elude Saul. And so God takes him through a season where he's got to learn how to duck and dodge darts. And then then he puts him on the run. He gets him in a cave. And then he has to deal with the whole idea, well, I can kill Saul,
Mhm.
not once but twice. So now I've got to be in a season of forgiving the people who actually were the person who was throwing darts at me.
Mhm.
Uh, and then he finally gets to this kind of impasse at 1 Samuel 30, where he's at Ziklag, and all forgive me, all Hades is breaking loose.
Mhm.
Now his own men want to kill him, and he has to endure another season of how do you motivate people who, in a sense, you see a vision, but they didn't sign up for the hardship of the vision that God showed you.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow.
And so he's got to lead his men into a battle with the Amalekites who've come and stolen all of their women, children, cattle, everything. Um, but the very next move for David after Ziklag is Hebron, where he becomes king of Judah.
Mhm.
If he would have quit at Ziklag in that season, he never would have got to Hebron and become king.
Mhm.
And so for the leaders, I will say you've got to learn how to endure seasons, because seasons always shift. They always change. It's natural. Fall, winter, spring, summer. Seasons always change. For the church, I would say the very same thing. You've got to learn how to endure seasons, but you also have to understand what it means to be under leadership. And for many of our churches, and I'll just speak to Cascade. I love my church. I feel like I serve one of the best churches in the world. But leading leaders is often a very difficult task, and it takes a certain amount of humility for leaders to say, you know what, I may be a leader in the courtroom, in the doctor's office, in the classroom as a teacher, professor. I may be, X on my job. But in the church, there is one who has been sent and called, commissioned, ordained by God to lead. And so, what does it mean to even come underneath leadership? Um, And so I think churches who are able to model that well, who are able to adjust and to adapt, and who say, you know what, frankly, nothing is the same. Like, it trips me out, Pastor, that people expect the church to stay the same after a pandemic, and their work environment isn't even the same anymore.
That's right.
Work environment is the same anymore. Nobody's. I mean, people are remote working. Everything has changed,
Everything
yet we want the church
to
to
stay the
remain this antiquated, entity that is really for our comfort, and not for our prophetic witness. And I think when we confuse the church as being a place for our comfort and not our witness, then we've now, unfortunately, um, disregarded the Great Commission, and that is, go ye therefore into all the world and make disciples. And so I think once you do that, you're really in kind of dangerous territory. So I think there's give and take on both ends, but I would just say wisdom. Churches have to be adaptable, flexible. You mentioned 5 to 7 years. We chose to do 2 to 3 years for our strategic plan because we realized something, consequential for us is that, we had some plans pre-COVID, and when the pandemic hit, I mean, we had to rip them apart and say, "May the Lord watch between me and thee." Well, we absolutely, we just, it's just, I mean, so what we decided to do is to become more agile. And, as we were becoming multi-site, we actually hired a consulting firm to help us to kind of rethink our entire strategy around now becoming a multi-site church. So as we're looking at second, third, fourth, potentially fifth campus, we're having to change our entire strategy.
yeah.
And that's a collective effort that I think both pastor and people and leaders have to engage together, in order for it to work. I hope that answered your question, Kai.
That was a great answer. That was great stuff. Great stuff. So, and you're so right. So Yolanda and I laughed because in 2019 we went through this whole revisioning, and wrote a strategic plan, and then 2020 happens, right? So we actually we had a second campus that actually became its own congregate, separate entity. Celebrated that in June of 2019. Spent the summer engaging with our leaders, wrote a strategic plan, and it was working it like, and it had a financial component called Trust Walk and all of that. And then COVID hits in early 2020, and it has rerouted everything.
Yeah.
And so we're having to go through it. So I appreciate you saying that. Again, Kevin, I think that so many of our leaders in the local church, because you and I get a chance to dialogue with our colleagues. It is our job to study what's going on in the world of leading churches and be in the church. It's our job to study and know what's going on. But our leaders often only know what's going on in their church. And part of the danger in that is that they can start to think that the challenges that they are facing are unique, and they really aren't. If you are a church older than 50 years, and if you've got a mixture of seasoned saints and young adults, and you've come through COVID, you're facing many of the same challenges. And I think it's encouraging for people to hear, okay, we're not the only one. I think that's so important. We're not the only ones. And there are other people who are walking through this, and they're doing it with joy. They're doing it with excitement. They're doing it with energy. They're doing it with Kai Green. You'll hear Kai talk about this with creativity and imagination. So we can do the same thing. That's possible for us as well. Yolanda, you want to jump? You have anything you want to add right now? Kai, you want to add anything else right now? And then,
I do. So we've talked about churches and leaders. This would be a good segue into young adults. What do you feel what does the church need to do to effectively evangelize young adults? And then in addition to that, how has you being a young adult pastor aided you in that?
so Yolanda, can we reverse those? I want him to answer the question first of how Cascade has embraced young adult leadership, and then let him talk about what does it take for other churches to assimilate people, young adults, into leadership and reach the next generation.
Yeah, great questions. I mean, I think for me, the benefit that I had of Cascade is that I knew the people coming back. That's a rarity. Most pastors have not served for a time or tenure on the staff, and so I knew many of the people. The transition was from second chair to first chair, and having now to make decisions at a different level and have conversations, encounters at a different level than I did when I was an associate. So, I think that's kind of the first level of it. The second part is, Cascade is. I think what I would say about Cascade is they've always kind of been on the cutting edge in terms of, hey, we need someone who will speak to the issues of our community. Whether it's Joseph Lowry, who's one of my mentors, and who helped me tremendously in the transition, and being under his teaching and leadership, and to Walter Kimbrough, who had come as a younger pastor to kind of help them transition from a white church to a black church. I mean, he's there for 26 years, and Dr. Kimbrough's still living, and so I still kind of had these stalwart leaders who were around to help me to navigate a bit more, and I needed to lean on them. And I will tell any pastor, any young leader who's coming up, do not in any kind of way shun the previous pastoral leadership, because they really can help you navigate, some waters that you would not know how to navigate. And so I really leaned on them. I remember the first conversation I had with Dr. Lowry. I said, "Look, I just need you to tell me straight up, what do I need to do to lead these people?" And he said, "Love the people, and they'll love you back."
Wow.
That was all his advice. And that's what I did. So, but to that end, you hear churches all the time say, "Well, we need a young leader, young pastor, young X," and until you start bringing young ideas, fresh expressions, etc., and they like, "Whoa, oh, I didn't know it would be like this." So I think there's a component of it for that, because they're going to be pushed. We had a young family. I mean, we still have a young family, right? And so the crucial question that we had to ask, that I often asked, was, is this church reaching me? Because I'm the demographic that you say you want to reach. And if I wasn't the pastor, would I come to this church? And that is a question that I continue to hold in tension often. So I think that's one part of it. I think the other part is, uh, you know, patience in leadership growth, because personally I've had to grow as a leader. I don't think any leader comes into a situation fully prepared and ready
Not at all.
for the challenge.
That's right.
So there is a lot of grace that the church has to give, and that I have to give them. They've got to give me, that I'm walking into something that is, above my leadership ability at this point. And I think that is a very real conversation and admission that anybody who walked in, because the truth is none of them could do it.
Right.
No parishioner, as much experience as they have in corporate and what, could step into this and know exactly what it takes. Nobody. I don't care how experienced you are. You cannot step into something like that fully prepared and ready. And so you got to grow into it. You got to grow into the responsibility. You got to grow into the seat. And people have to give you the grace to grow. And so, if it's one thing that I can appreciate about Cascade, is that I've surrounded myself, and that's another thing, surround yourself with the right people, who give you the grace to grow. And I can say in year 6, I'm a different leader than I was in year 1. Personally, we're a different church in year 6 than we were in year 1. And a large part of that is, I just think that people have to make you their pastor. And I had the title, but I wasn't the pastor until people made me the pastor. And I think in year 6, leading through a pandemic, having, to do over 130 funerals in the span of 2 years, sitting with people, being with folk, really going through those seasons of long suffering. And people say, you know what, we bent, but we didn't break. And he was there through it all. That's my path. So I listen to those like touch points. I listen to those plays, not he's the pastor, but he's my pastor. Like, and so to anybody who's watching tonight, one of the greatest gifts you can give Pastor Johnson, Pastor Oliver, who is to say that that's my pastor. That he or she's just not the pastor. That's my pastor. So I would say those are some of the challenges. And then the other thing is, I think you've got to. So for us, what we found that's been helpful is not going so wide, but going deeper. So we have a target, right? You figure out what's the target, and if it's 25 to 40 based on your demographics, everything has to be done intentionally. So we do demographic studies of our area. I mean, we do intense work on studying our area. Our Midtown campus, we've done intense work on studying that area. We know who we're going after. And so all of our programs, all of our worship, all of our experiences are leaned into that demographic with the understanding that we're going to reach a broader segment, because people want to be a part of the community. So it takes a lot of intentionality. It takes a lot of patience, and you need allies. And so I would need allies. So, man, I don't have a magic formula for this. I mean, I had to find out, you've been a pastor for a long time. You're going to have some battles. You're going to have to weather the storm. You're going to have what I call the foolish talk about people saying, well, you only care about young people because of your age. You don't like old folk.
Right.
Like that is this. I got grandparents. Okay. I've literally sat with the older members of our church in life, in death, in sickness, through it all. And you mean to tell me that I don't care about? So you have to kind of let those broad statements. What they're really saying is that they don't want you to forget about them.
That's right.
That's been the main thing for assuming the mantle as a young leader, is that you got to hold in tension all of these different groups. And I'll say this in closing, and I'll let you guys get to your next question. But admittedly, I disappointed a lot of the young people in our church when I came back. And that hurt like Hades. I disappointed them because they expected that when I came back, because I was their young adult pastor, youth pastor, we grew this ministry. I was PK to them. And I'm still very close with many of them. But they thought everything was going to transform overnight, and we were just going to be this oasis of, contemporary everything overnight. And I went from being a pastor of a division to now I was a pastor of the entire community. So I couldn't pick and choose. And so I think in the disappointment, for many of them, obviously many have come back. Our young adult ministry is growing tremendously now. But I think there was a growing edge for the young people to say change never happens overnight. It doesn't happen on your job overnight. It doesn't happen in your career. And if you think you're going to go on a job and you just out of college or you just out of grad school and you think you're going to get a position, make a little money and change the entire culture of that company, grow up and get real. It ain't going to happen.
What? That doesn't happen overnight?
Nothing happened. And you talking to a millennial. Nothing had. When you want to transform culture, it happens over a period of time through relationships and through dialogue and through mutual understanding and through trust. Anything that flips overnight, chances are it will fail. And somebody's going to suffer a price for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I will tell you, like my professor, Dr. Luther Smith, told me at Camden School of Theology. He told me about my ministry. He said, your ministry has to be a long distance run, not a sprint.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my generation doesn't like running long distances. We like sprinting. And we've got to figure out how to get our stamina up to run longer, much like, our forefathers and foremothers knew what long distance running was like because they ain't had no choice. Uh, but when you're trying to change culture, it takes time.
Wow. So I know we have Deontay and any of our young adults. Hi, Kaya. Thank you all for watching. Thank you. And that's good. Yes, that it takes time. You cannot change the culture overnight. And you got to love the people. You got to love the people and build relationships. And you got to think long term and changing the culture. I'm so glad you said that. Two things I want to pick up on that. I want to see if Kaya and Yolanda want to jump in too.
Yeah.
You say you did 100 and you've done 130 funerals in what span?
During COVID, we had about 130 deaths in our church, and couple that with, and I tell people, perspective is everything. So it's how people died. That's number one. It wasn't all from COVID. I mean, we had a lot of people just died, but even with that, because of COVID, you could not have funerals
Right.
in the traditional sense. Had to have graveside services. Many of the family members who we had to interact with, they saw their loved one for the last time either through a window or on FaceTime because they couldn't go into nursing home facilities. They couldn't go. And so you're dealing with that aspect of it. So that's the mental health aspect of it. Like, how do I deal with looking at my mama die on FaceTime? Like, that's crazy. A lot. And then Atlanta being the cradle of the civil rights movement. So we had, during COVID, actually, when COVID first started, March 2020, Joe Lowry dies.
Yeah.
So we shut down our church and we're trying to figure out, how to have a funeral and to honor the life of the dean of the civil rights movement, who is my personal mentor, who is former pastor of this church. I mean, and that was hard. That was hard. I can't say anything, more than that. It was just hard. And then John Lewis,
Yeah.
Atlanta,
Yeah.
C.T. Vivian, Atlanta, Hank Aaron, who lives right down the street from the church, connected, Atlanta. And then on top of that, all of, the social unrest with, George Floyd and having to lead through that and, just, the climate of civil rights in the country. And everybody, I don't care if they got, how they feel about your leadership or whatever, everybody turns to their church.
Right.
Everybody turns to their church. How are you going to bury mama? How are you going to care for us? How are you going to be there when we need you? Right. And so sometimes I think people fail to realize that, outside of every other entity that people feel like they need the most, the church really is the most central necessity to every community, and especially the Black folk.
Wow.
And we got to remember that.
Oh my good. So you know what? And that's a perfect. That is so powerful, because to hear you say that as a 36-year-old young man who's been pastoring this impactful church for 6 years, so from the age of 30, for you to say that of your generation, because so much of what the media is portraying about how young adults feel about church is so negative. It's so negative. And they don't tell stories of people like Dr. Kevin Murriel. They don't tell the stories of people like Kai Green, people who challenge the church, who speak prophetically to the church, but who stand deeply within the lineage and history and legacy of the church, and both receive from and pour back into the church. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, in terms of what the way young adult millennials and Gen Zers are being portrayed as being anti-church, hating the church, What's your perspective on that? How are you speaking into that? Are you encountering that? And then go back, then follow up with answering Yolanda's question about then how do we reach that generation? What are some things that you think churches get wrong? How do we effectively reach the next generations?
Yeah, I mean, I'll couple the two. I mean, I think that's a myth. Young people are not anti-church. What they are is anti-fake, and they're anti what they and what they are is. I mean, I don't know. I really like to be on here, but I mean, what they are is just. I mean,
Please be really,
Uh,
really
uh,
real.
yeah,
be
I
be
mean,
blunt.
yeah, they're anti-judgment. They're anti. We had, so for example, our Midtown campus a couple of nights ago, we had a young adult Midtown meetup. I mean, we had almost 100 young adults come on a Friday night, you know, for worship, fellowship, and just to chill. I mean, and this was our very first one. So to suggest that young people are not, I mean, let me say this: they're getting their feel from somewhere.
Yeah.
They're seeking something, and so to suggest that young people aren't engaged, I don't buy it. What I do think this generation is just not interested in are some of the things that you know historic traditional churches have just done forever. And it's not that they're not interested; they just don't know about it. They don't have a frame of reference. Like we often like. So I grew up. I was born and raised in the church. I mean, we were in church every week, every day, all the time. So much so I can our line of Dr. Watts, him. We knew so much. I mean, I'm from a small town in Mississippi, and so it was just what was expected. Church, sports, family, hunting, those things is what we did in the country. I mean, that was just it. As a matter of fact, church world kind of had its own culture. I mean, we had basketball. We played basketball through church league. We had a baseball team through church league. It was really a sense of community. What I think is lacking today is more hierarchy and less community.
Wow.
And that's what turns young people off.
Wow.
Young people are seeking community, and young is relative. I mean, so if you're talking about young adults, ages 18 to 40, I mean, they're seeking a few things from my perspective. They're seeking community, authenticity, something that speaks to what they're familiar with. So I'll be honest, man, the reason that we're planning a Midtown campus in the heart of Midtown Atlanta, right on Ponce, is because I'm just clear there's some young folks who will never set foot in traditional Cascade.
Wow.
And they're just not going to do it. It was a realization that our leaders came to that conclusion, that some of the kids of the folk who went there, they were going to all these other churches in Atlanta. They were going to church, but let me just be clear, they're going to the wrong churches. And I'm clear about when I say wrong churches. By wrong church, I mean churches with toxic theologies.
Come on, sir. Yes, sir. Come on, sir.
Churches that are preaching a gospel that is so antithetical to what I would want my children to learn. What your pastor just because it's popular and it looks good, when you listen to the theology, it is as toxic as Paul was dealing with when he writes his epistles with the super apostles. Paul dealt with the same thing. So when you really break down scripture, Paul was dealing with the very same things as we are seeing with these, quote unquote, YouTube pastors across the country who have millions of followers who are preaching toxic theologies. So Paul has a right to these people and say, look, and that's why when he writes in 2 Corinthians, he says, look, I was taken up to the third heaven and I saw things that were unexplainable. He's having to validate his apostleship because there are super apostles. In other words, there were those who were popular in the community who were gaining more traction. And he said, all right, y'all can follow them if you want to, but they haven't seen the risen Christ.
Yeah.
They haven't encountered the
Come on,
true
sir.
Jesus.
Come
And
on, sir.
so, so I get it. And so what we were having to do so much of, Pastor, is we were having to clean up and heal so many of our young adults from these toxic theologies they ran to when they were disengaged from their church. Let me tell you, I mean, it was small things, it was simple things, it was things that could have been avoided. For example, you know, you know, young lady gets pregnant out of wedlock. And why would I want to come to my church? People who knew me when I was in Sunday school here, and I already know whenever they see me, it's going to be the same old gossip. So I don't even want to deal with it. I'm 19 now, I'm 21 now, 25 now. I ain't going there because I don't want to deal with the questions. You know, um, somebody gets divorced, and now everybody's asking, well, where is where's your spouse? I don't see them no more. It ain't none of your business where they are. Why would I want to come and be questioned about what's happening in my personal life? And so I think that's a micro of the greater macro, but I do think there's something to be said about sometimes church folks are way too nosy, and they're focused on the wrong things. We're there to worship. We need to set up a no judgment zone. If we really want young people to come, don't come asking them questions. Don't come asking a young couple when they're gonna have a baby. Like, you don't know if, and that's one of the major issues, man, we're dealing with right now is, in the and I get so many I get so many questions around, you know, our young sisters not being able to get pregnant and what that really means for womanhood, right? And everybody's asking when y'all just got married, okay, when the baby coming? I can't tell y'all how many times we got asked
Wow.
when y'all gonna have y'all's first child. Well, what if my wife couldn't have? I mean, what if we were struggling with that very thing?
Right.
You
Right.
know, so
Right.
I just think, long story short, I think we've got to change how we engage everyone in church, period.
Support them
Come to
where they are.
Yeah, come to church to worship. Don't come to church to find out information. Don't come to church to have, drama. People will need a refuge. If church can't be a refuge, people gonna stay at home and they're gonna stream on their couch, and your online number's gonna be through the roof, but your in-person number's gonna sink
Yeah.
because people don't want to deal with people sometimes.
Yeah.
Frankly, pastors don't want to deal with people sometimes.
Be true. That's right. That's
And so I think churches, so to Elon, to answer your question, I think churches who are going to reach younger generations are going to have to set up no judgment zones and change. And I don't even think it really gets down to contemporary or traditional music, etc. I think people are looking for belonging.
wow. Wow.
They want belonging.
Wow.
Period.
I can't tell you as you're saying that, and Kai is shaking his head. Y'all gotta, the two of you all gotta say more about it, because so many people think it's like you gotta create this cool room and have this contemporary music. And I see both of y'all saying no, no. So come on, Kai.
I, no, I mean, he's right. It's the truth is there. Oh no, wait, the truth is there. There you go. Wrong angle. But you know, so my work, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is what I do. I talk to corporations and companies, and they have these budgets. But I'm like, the main thing is create a space where people can be vulnerable. create a space where they actually feel they can talk to one another and be heard. And I would almost push the other way. Like if you look, like, real quick, look at the music scene, right? You got Maverick City, you got some of these really, really fantastic, some of the most modern music that's coming out. But there are large groups of people that they want that old hymn. They they want that old prayer. That the old deacon. Like, I know that
That's right.
sounds funny, but there's these more intimate parts of Christian formation that people are looking for. And as he said earlier, it's not that they don't want these things, they've not experienced them. They do not know about them. right? So it's that missing link, that experiential piece. That's where belonging happens. Like so, I think, and again, I think he's absolutely right. It's about creating those spaces where people feel safe. We share our stories, we grow from one another, we feed off of one another, and so that's what begins to change us. But look on the market, look at corporations, look at workshops, look at speakers. Everybody's talking about belonging. And this is one of the reasons I'm afraid that we're trying to use corporations to replace churches, because people come there and they're paid to be there. Then you try to enforce this sense of belonging with no real foundation on ethics, morals, and values. So, so everything he's saying, even in companies, when they say, well, young millennials, they want to be a part of something that's bigger than them. Does your company have a great philanthropic mission? And all the time I'm like, that's the church, man. That's what we doing on Sundays, right? So he's, again, all I can say is he's absolutely right. We have to find ways to create belonging. And guess what? Sometimes that doesn't involve a sermon. Uh-oh. That it means just being present with people. The last plug for him, I want to tell him, I had one dinner with Joseph Lowry, 2005, right when I was graduating, completely changed my outlook on a lot of things, but he was amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Look, imagine sitting at his bedside watching a TV program or movie with him, and seeing him in those spaces. It was a gift to know him, and not just Dr. Lowry, but Andrew Young. Is also another mentor of mine, and just to see their strategy. Every church has to have strategy. Corporations have strategy. Churches have to have strategy. If Jesus had strategy, Paul had strategy. It can't. So anyway, we can't just kind of show up and expect things to just happen. And to have a strategic leader, like you all have, I think is extremely important. Kyle, I'll say to this thing of belonging. One thing I'll add. I think, but belonging is so important that corporations modeled the church a long time ago. Leonard Sweet wrote a book, The Gospel According to Starbucks.
Yeah.
In that book, he talks about Starbucks changing their language to be evangelists. They wanted to be coffee evangelists. That is, they're taking the church language and using it to create an ambiance at Starbucks to reach more people. Yeah,
Yes.
I just have to plug that.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing. I like, if people don't believe us, go look at Apple, go look at Nike. I'm telling you, on their website, they're going to list their core values.
Yeah.
They usually have 8 to 10. 10 commandments. Like, it's
commandments.
Literally,
yeah.
It is the church. So I'm just validating again what you're saying. But yeah, that's 100% correct. That's it.
So, and I've got to, Kevin, I got to ask you. So one of the things that I struggle with in terms of the young adults is how to make sure, how to be relevant and meaningful for young adults, but at the same time, without compromising sound theology. Because here's the thing: if I give you something that's easy and cheap, that's emotionally exciting for you, but I know that it's not good thing, then what I'm doing, to me, I'm setting you up to be disappointed by church. And then you're going to blame God for that, because I gave you something that can't sustain you. The good stuff hardly ever has a great shine to it, right? You think about diamonds. Diamonds are created, like, and everybody knows this, the tons of pressure and the millions of years that it takes to create diamonds. Like, it's not overnight. It takes, and so how do you walk that balance in terms of the young adults? This balance between I want to speak to what they care about, what's meaningful to them, but at the same time, making sure you're rooting them in sound theology.
In all honesty, I think one word that has God has really just kind of placed on me for the last couple of years is authenticity. And actually, Two words: authenticity and
That's one of
vulnerability.
Kai's buzzwords, by the way. That's why he's laughing.
Yeah,
I knew it was coming.
authenticity and vulnerability. Vulnerability. And I'm gonna be honest, that was hard for me. It is such a paradigm shift from how we were raised as to how pastors, and now I'm talking to especially senior pastors. This is, I think, so Pastor Johnson, this is you and me,
I hear you. I hear you.
because we've been trained, whether experientially or through just years of study, that the pastor almost has to be the strongest person in anything. Like, you got to stand strong. You got to be a good soldier. You know, and I just think that's wrong. I I have discovered during COVID, people have connected more with my vulnerability and my authenticity than they have with my strength. When I told my congregation, that I wrestle with depression,
Wow.
that I have a counselor. Hell, I buried 130 people in COVID. You mean, forgive me? I'm sorry about y'all's pocket.
Oh, I
You mean
love
to
it.
tell
Oh,
me?
come on, sir. Yes.
So here I ask you: try to facilitate 130 funerals on top of the ones you've done the last 3 years, and tell me how you feel.
Right.
You have to bury a child
That's right.
that's 3 days old, whose parents have been trying to give birth for years, and they finally have their baby. And 3 days later, on Thanksgiving Day, she dies. And you got to be the one that offers words of comfort.
Come on, sir. Yes.
After your baby was just born.
Right. Exactly. Yes. You didn't even get a chance to celebrate your own baby's birth, because you're happy. You'll help. Keep going. Keep going.
So my thing is hearing. So what happened within our church, and I think it could happen in many more, is when I was willing to be vulnerable, then it gave my church permission to go there with me. And man, I started getting calls and calls and calls. And I think at that moment, I truly became people's pastor, because they were saying, wow, he's not just this guy preaching to us about faith and keep going. And he really has to go sit on somebody's couch and really say, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Or really wrestle with, I got a business degree, I got a doctorate, do I absolutely have to do this? Mm-mm. I don't. I got options. I choose to do this. And I think even more importantly, I get to do this. And what does it mean for me to undergo a physical transformation? I lost 50 pounds during COVID. I committed myself to working out every day, getting my mental health. And I had to literally model that before my church. My church saw me go from looking one way to looking another way during COVID on camera. And I got to preach every week in front of a camera, and ain't nobody saying anything bad.
Right.
And we never missed a beat.
Never missed a beat.
And to name how hard that was, and to say at the same time that, you know what, it was hard for me, but I can only imagine how hard it was for you.
Yeah.
You had to bury your mother. You had to. So you know what? Maybe we all was in COVID together. And so I just think there has to be vulnerability and authenticity. And I have, with my young adults especially, And we don't stream our Midtown meetups because I need to be able to say things to them that I can't say on Sunday mornings,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they appreciate it. And I'm at a season of my life. I don't really care what people, it's
Yeah.
okay. I'm gonna say it is what it is because chances are y'all dealing with a whole lot of stuff you won't want to say. I see a whole lot of stuff going on in my, but I'm just I'm gonna be real, and like my mom said, let the chips fall where they may. But you reach more people that way.
My wife is asking you a question on behalf of our young. We have a young adult who just finished Spelman and is now in the teaching education profession, and she's trying to find her baby a church.
Oh,
So her baby's gonna find her own church, but
come on to Cascade. You feel my wife's a Spelman grad. You come on, yes.
that'll help. That will help. That will help. That will help. Man, this is so much rich, amazing stuff. Um, and just such a great conversation about young adults. I've got to ask you all, you and Kai, this question, and maybe Yolanda as well. Have you all seen or heard about any reviews on the movie Hunk for Jesus, Save Your Soul?
Yes, I have. I've not seen it, but yeah, I know there's some reviews out about it. I don't I don't know specifically what you're asking me, but
Just want to hear see if you all have seen it. If not seen it, have you seen any talk about it? And then what are your thoughts about the conversation that's going on?
Kai, you wanna go? I mean,
yeah. So here's my quick take. So haven't watched it. Love to watch it for myself, and but from some of the stuff that I've read, I know there's some people that have been very critical of it and the light that it shines on the church. They feel as if it is, just making it a harder battle for pastors. I mean, that's just kind of the quick thing that I heard. I would say again, I still need to watch it, but given what I see coming through a TikTok feed of what's actually happening on a Sunday, um, or what I can catch on YouTube or any social media, or even what I can catch on the news, if it's pastors falling in other types of scandal. I mean, I think that I think the challenge has always been out there. The struggle has always been out there. People have always ridiculed it. It travels faster now. But I'm at a space to where as people in the church, as leaders, I'm more concerned about what we're doing to feed that narrative versus how the world wants to take it and spin it. I can't do nothing about that. But I do believe that I can work with other leaders, create community with other leaders to try to create a space where we can have some camaraderie and be there to support one another so these things don't happen, that we can change that perception. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I would say movies are meant to make money. I mean, that's why you make a film. People want to make money. I think the unfortunate thing is that you know people think they can use the church to make money. I have not seen it. I really have no desire to see it, quite honestly. I mean, I've seen the trailer. I mean, it just didn't do anything for me. Kind of, I don't know the storyline, quite honestly, so I don't have enough information to, to make a sound judgment on it. But I think people want to be entertained. People want to make money. I think any criticism I could give is that it's unfortunate that people think that the church is commonplace to do that.
Right.
And
Right.
would you do that with a Jewish synagogue? Would you do that with a mosque? Would you do that with? It's only Christianity that it's seemingly only Christianity that people say we can do something that would almost poke fun at, you know. So, and again, I don't know much about it. I love Black people. I believe I want our actors and actresses to do their thing. Do I think they could be more selective about the roles they play? And absolutely, I think at some point you have to have standards. And You need to be able to choose what is or is not probably the best, you know, the best model or representation. But everybody isn't in there. Again,
Right.
my opening statement: movies are to make money, and if
Right.
that's your goal, then do your thing. But I probably won't see it. Honestly, man, I hadn't given it much thought.
Yeah. I have not seen it. I did read some reviews about it, and it just alarmed me. I do want to make mention. This is, and pretty much when I read the review, when I read the story, the plot, just the movie plot, that's what I felt. Dr. Bowie, Dr. Michael Bowie, who, by the way, will be on with us next Wednesday. We're going to continue this conversation. Dr. Bowie is over strengthening the Black Church for discipleship ministries for our denomination. And he's going to come on and talk and just kind of give us a big picture of what's going on across the globe in the UMC, what's going on across the country, how churches are coming out of COVID, how they're dealing with young adults, how they're addressing the socio-political issues that are impacting our communities and churches. So he's going to give us a perspective from a national perspective on all of those issues. So Dr. Bull, we look forward to having you on. But I like this statement, what he says. This is how I felt. And I had this conversation with my wife, talked about the movie. We're already dealing with COVID-19, racism, white supremacy. Now this and another attack against the Black church. It's almost just horrible timing. But what I will say is this. Thank you, Dr. Bull. We're looking forward to having you as well. I can't believe that I get the two of you all back to back, and then the rest of this month is just going to be absolutely awesome. I'll say more about that later after we let Dr. Murriel go. But I do want to say this, that I think what you said with the two of you all. So Kai talks every week about vulnerability and authenticity. I mean, that's my daughters talk about that. So my daughters, Dr. Murray, grew up in a mega church. We were at Windsor Village at the time. They grew up in, so they're not impressed with mega church. They're looking for authenticity, vulnerability, transparency. I think that some of what gets portrayed, now I think that movie, from what I've seen, now I haven't seen it, tends to make a mockery out of it. But I think the issue of that pastors, you said it, that we're not always a strong person. We're not always the one who's got it going. And being able to live in that vulnerability and be in community with your church, at the same time, be respected and loved by your members. When that doesn't happen, you got one or two choices. You either got to pretend like you're strong, you got to pretend like you're perfect, or you're going to have a horrible fall that's going to embarrass you, your church, and your family. The only way out of that is for us to practice this kind of vulnerability, for us to be able to have honest, to create safe spaces, and to live into our vulnerability and authenticity. And then for members to embrace the fact that your pastor is both your leader, but also someone who is trying to get closer to the heart of God, and who feels, just as you feel alienated from the heart of God, your pastor will feel that way at times. So what would happen if a church created space for pastors to be able to, when they're in that season, to say that? And then for that congregation, rather than just, we don't want the church to judge people, and we don't want people to judge the pastor. Don't judge your pastor. Don't attack your pastor. How can we wrap ourselves around our pastor so that we help him or her get through this season and get back to a place where they feel better about what they're doing?
Right. Psalm 23 is a beautiful example of that, and I would encourage every member, pastor, except to really study Psalm 23 with David. When you look at the pastoral relationship that God has with David, it really gives the model for the relationship that pastor has with people. When you read the first three verses, God is leading David. He's in front. You get to verse number 4, he says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me." That's it. He goes from being a leader in front to being a companion who walks with. And I think those are the two positions that a pastor always takes. There are going to be some seasons where you're going to be in front, and you're going to be leading people to follow. There are other seasons you're going to walk alongside as a companion.
Wow.
And I think what people have to realize, I think folks got to glean which season you're in.
Yes.
And so it may be a companion season,
Yes.
where I've got to walk with you through some things. And then it may be a leading season where I'm going to make you lie down in green pastures. I'm going to lead you beside still waters. And then I'm going to restore your soul. Um, I'm going to lead you in pathways of righteousness for my name's sake. And then I'm going to walk with you. I just, so I think you hit on it, man. I think churches really have to, again, give grace for both leadership and companionship. And those two really make the marks of a great ministry.
Wow. All right. It is 8:16, and I want to be true. You stay with us longer than we had planned. But thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. I want to say now that I love to have you back because we want to stay updated. We want to know what's going on with the Mid City. What is it? Mid City
Cascade Midtown.
Midtown campus. Want to hear more about that and just kind of follow what's going on with Cascade and with you. You're doing some amazing things both within and beyond Cascade, by the way. Very excited, very proud of you. My wife and I are proud of you as fellow Mississippians. She's proud of you as a fellow Jacksonite, Jackson State alumnus. And then you're just doing an amazing work. I want to give you a chance to just give a final word, anything that God may have just placed on your heart as you prepare to come and participate in this interview that you like to share with us before we let you go.
Very simple words: stay the course. I tell my church every Sunday: live God, love God, follow God, in all things, stay the course.
Amen.
Stay the course.
Stay the course. Stay the course. You hear that, St. Mark? Stay the course. Stay the course. Get through the season. Get through the season and stay the course. So, Doc, I want to do this and say more. We want to start doing this on Wednesday nights. I want to give us an opportunity to, when we gather, to give both. If you want to give to the St. Mark Ministry, but also to our guests when they come on, they don't. God's taking great care of Dr. Murriel. This is about expressing gratitude and appreciation. So I want to give you a chance. And I should have asked you this ahead of time, Doc, but can you give us your Cash App handle? Let Yolanda type it in. And then
Oh yeah, it's just my name, my first and last name.
Okay. Yeah. So can you type that in, Yolanda? Kevin Murriel at Kevin Murriel. $? Kevin Murriel. Okay, that's it. That's the Cash App. So St. Mark. So we have some folks on from Mississippi who are watching. My mom tuned in tonight there in Columbia, Mississippi. Who's also an she's an evangelist, Ruth Johnson, not just Mama. She will want me to know that. Stop just calling me Mama. Evangelist Ruth Johnson does amazing ministry. My mom is 81 and is learning social media and is out finding new ways to teach and share the wisdom that God has poured into her being at the age of 81, figuring out technology. She knows stuff about how to use Facebook that I haven't even learned, Kevin. So, but those of you that are watching, if I want to encourage you to send Dr. Murriel a gift, just send him a gift. And it doesn't matter what size it is, just the way of saying thank you. We appreciate what you have given us, your words of wisdom. We want to encourage you. We want to lift you up. You've done 130 funerals. Just that alone, we want to bless him and encourage him in the ministry. And then if you want to give to St. Mark, our Cash App handle, spell it out, St. Mark. Yolanda will find it and put it up.
It's on the screen, sir.
Yeah, I'm seeing Ella Ruth Johnson
in the top corner.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. See, there you go, Kevin. My mom would have already figured that out about this whole. So, but Kevin, thank you, man. Thank you. Say hello
Thank you all
to your family. I look forward to my family. Us when we're in Atlanta, maybe getting a chance to visit with you and your family. God bless you. Continue the great work at Cascade. We're praying for you and Cascade. Cascade is a beacon light. It is so important. It is a stalwart of faith and advocacy for civil rights and human rights in this country. And so we pray that Cascade will stay strong and continue to lead us and be a blessing to this nation. So God bless you. Let's pray, and then we will we will let you go. Father God, I thank you for Kevin, and I thank you for his family. I thank you for the amazing work you are doing in him, with him, and through him and his family, his amazing wife, and his beautiful children. And we pray your continued grace upon them. May your grace prosper and abound in their lives in untold, unimaginable ways, uh, so that every day, every month, every year, they see new revelations and new blessings and new pathways unfolding before them. We pray for Cascade. Thank you for the shadow, the covering of blessing you've placed over that church to be a witness to the nations. And we pray that you will keep Cascade vital and strong and focused. Thank you for the courage that Cascade had to bring on a 30-year-old pastor and walk into the future. May all churches who are struggling to stay relevant and be meaningful take courageous, bold steps with faith in you. God, we love you and we thank you for thank you for all that you're doing in us and for us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, Doc.
Amen.
Thank you, man.
Blessings to you all. Y'all take care.
Okay. All right.
God bless. Bye bye.
Take care.
All right, folks. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you all next Wednesday. Dr. Michael Bowie will be with us. It's going to be another amazing conversation. I promise you. He's going to bring us so much helpful information about what's going on, not beyond our local church, what's going on in Missouri, what's going on in Mississippi, in New York, with in the local church, and how churches are growing and finding new ways to do vital ministry. So I look forward to having you on for that. And then the following week, Pete Oakes will be on with us. And this guy is an entrepreneur, businessman. He's going to come on and talk to us about flourishing. And I don't know if you're still listening right now. I want you to make sure you put that date in on your calendar and don't miss this conversation. I believe so much in that concept that no matter what season we're in, that we can flourish. God's people can flourish in all seasons. That does not mean everything's going to go your way, but you can flourish in all seasons. And we're going to get a chance to hear from someone who's living that out abundantly, who's faced failure, defeat, chaos, collapse, and bounce back and flourished in the Lord. And so we look forward to hearing from him. God bless you. St. Mark, I look forward to seeing you on Sunday. I can't wait to get back in the pulpit. We're going to start a new series on Sunday called Living by a Prayer. And we're going to do a deep dive into the Lord's Prayer. If you think you know the Lord's Prayer, I think, and I expect to make you radically rethink that prayer and what it means and what it's about, that Jesus was calling us not just to pray, but to live a certain way. And if we live this prayer, that eyes have not seen, ears have not heard what God will do for us and through us. God bless you. Have an amazing night. Kai, thank you so much. You were great, amazing, and so helpful and insightful again. And Yolanda, thank you so much. I know you're tired. Thank you for coming on and staying connected, helping us get through tonight. And we look forward to seeing everyone back on next Wednesday.